Okay, we're recording. All right, let's get started. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to this month's Helium community call. So I am your moderator, Keenan. We've got a note taker, which is Waveform. So thank you very much, Waveform. So first of all, this meeting is recorded. So if you want to go back later on, listen to it, I'll have it ready for you in the governance section, recorded and ready to go. If you're deciding to speak on this call, you will be recorded along with that, just a heads up. We have the agenda, which was posted in the chat earlier. I'll ask if someone else can just post it there real quick one more time so you can follow along with our agenda for today. Excuse me. And if we have any additional agenda items, questions, or anything like that, feel free to add to the agenda or just message Waveform in the chat. And thank you again, Waveform, for posting that link to follow along on the agenda. So first things first, just wanted to say, again, thank you for coming, but a quick reminder about Discord security and safety. Once again, there's always a lot of scammers on here that are trying to impersonate and take your tokens. Please, please, please be very vigilant. No one from the Helium team will be messaging you. That includes myself. If you get a message from a quote unquote Keenan, please, please, please know it is almost guaranteed to be a scammer. I won't message you. Double check the Helium Discord names. For example, if you click on my name here, it'll say Keenan_Helium. What's happening with scammers is they're changing it to Keenan_Helium or Keenan with 3 E's. A lot of tricky things like that. If you want to know if you're talking to a real person here, we'll be talking to you in public. And if for some reason we do have to DM you, we will announce that in public. Okay, so just be vigilant there. There are no support systems here. There's no ticketing system. There is no official Helium support on the Discord. So any messages you get like that are a scam. So please, 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 again, any questions that you have, keep it in public. Don't respond to anyone that sends you a friend request or a DM. Okay, now that that's over, we're going to move on to an engineering update from Noah. So take it, Noah, please.
Hey. So biggest update that's come out, and sorry, there were a few bugs with it, but to the wallet app, we have basically upgraded all of our transaction handling. So one, it has better compute estimates, and two, we started using lookup tables so we can more aggressively pack transactions. Now, sounds complicated, but what this means in practice is that certain things like claiming your rewards on your hotspots should now be twice as fast because we can fit 2 times as many claims into a single transaction. And claiming your rewards on a staked position that's delegated to a subnetwork is about 3 times as fast now because we can pack 3 times as many of those into one transaction. You also see that sending tokens and stuff will be a little bit faster because the compute estimates are better. So yeah, that's gonna help. And then yeah, Solana is starting to deploy fixes to the congestion problems. So it's a lot of stuff around stake-weighted QoS, which basically means if you're sending your transactions through a validator that has stake, they're much more likely to land. I think Hashcode can hop up here at some point and talk more about that after, because he's been keeping a pretty close eye on it. But in the wallet app, we've also got kind of coming soon, a feature that's been requested for a while. I think it actually used to exist in one of the older Helium apps, which was being able to actually look at a map and see where all of your hotspots are deployed, and then click on them that way. I know the list view isn't exactly the most ideal way to find your hotspots, especially if you have a bunch of them. And then another thing coming soon to the wallet app, maybe a little longer term, is support for proper Solana derivation paths and key pairs. So I'm sure if you've tried to import your Helium wallet into like Phantom or Soulflare, you've noticed that like you can't use the mnemonic there. You have to actually export the private key. That's because when we were on the old Helium L1, we used different derivation paths than Solana uses. So at a certain point, we'll upgrade it, and any new wallets created will start using the Solana derivation paths. And then, old wallets, we might give a path to migrate, but they will just continue working and you'll still be able to import them and such. But one of the neat things that you can do with this, with the way that Solana does derivation paths, and a bunch of other people do it this way too, but you can have a single mnemonic that has 10, 20, 100 wallets under it. So you don't have to have a different mnemonic for each wallet. And this is something you can kind of see if you've been using Ledger as well, because that already has support for it. Um, let's see, smart contract wise, we've got HIP 109, which is like hex boosting by a particular device type, is in audit. We've got a pretty commonly requested feature, which was being able to set a custom destination on your hotspots for the rewards, also an audit. Now, that's useful for a number of reasons. Like you might want to keep all of your hotspots in one wallet, but have all of the rewards you're claiming go to, some cold wallet. So that's one usage of this. But companies like Relay are also using this for, creating better tooling for large deployers. So that'll be coming soon. And then it looks, I haven't actually looked at the hips yet, but it looked like proxy voting was going to pass. So that will also be coming soon. And that's going to be a pretty big lift, UI, UX wise. Bye if you want to touch on the Solana updates.
Sure. Yeah. So, as most of our community has kind of been experiencing this is maybe old news for everybody here. Solana has had a bunch of sort of congestion issues. Essentially, Solana is a very fast and cheap chain, and it's structured in a way that doesn't have something called a mempool, which you might see in Ethereum or in Bitcoin. And so the block builder, the sort of leader of every slot, is getting spammed by bots and by arbitrageurs or searchers or any of these folks who are trying to find different ways to make small slices of money lots of times by doing transactions on this very fast and cheap chain. So it's a fundamental difference of architecture that's causing the issues that we're having, at least like it's sort of enabling the issues that we're having. And then on top of that, the implementation of the networking stack and the sort of main client, the Solana Labs client, or now it's called the Agave client, that isn't great. Like it's not complete. It's something called Quick, which is a networking protocol. If folks in the community are interested in knowing about that, but the sort of implementation of that, which is through this library called Quinn, was kind of incomplete, and has lots of bugs in it. And so there are some changes to that implementation that are coming in the 1.18 release of the Solana Validator client. But in the meantime, there have been some changes that have been made to the 1.17 release. That's what's currently running on most validators in mainnet. That implement this thing called stake-weighted quality of service connections. And so this is sort of what Noah's referring to. That did get rolled out. It does make a difference, but it doesn't solve all the problems. Right now, the 1.18 release looks like it's likely to be a release candidate sometime in early May. And there are sort of ongoing changes that are being made on the 1.17 side along the way. So yes, things are going to get better. There's some things that we're doing on our team to try to make this better. So all of the folks in our community use, or many of the folks in our community use the Helium Wallet app. And the wallet app uses RPC servers that are hosted by the foundation and or paid for by the foundation, and sort of we proxy to the Helios, which is our RPC provider. Some changes to proxy over the next week or two to try to use other options as well to sort of improve transaction landing. We are also, Noah mentioned that we made some changes to claiming to try to optimize that transaction. And so those changes have gone out. We'll probably continue to make changes there as we find them. But this is sort of edge optimization or tail optimization that we have to do to try to really make things work well for our community. I will say that although all this stuff is tough and is definitely has an impact on our community, it's been about a year since we were on our own chain, and still think we're in a better place by orders of magnitude. To be able to work in an ecosystem that is changing so fast and is sort of running at this speed and at this relatively low cost, especially compared to running our own sovereign chain. So we get to focus on the things that are important specifically for our community, and not necessarily have to focus on things like block production or transaction processing, which were things that we were worried about and things that we were working on as multiple engineering teams on the old chain. So things are getting better. They'll continue to get better. As folks are seeing issues, please alert people in the community, community managers. We are listening, and Noah and I are spending almost entirely our time thinking about these problems. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for that message, guys. Appreciate it. On that note, like Hashcode said, if you're seeing any issues with your app, feel free to ping one of us. Give us as much detail as you can, and we'll pass that info along. We want to make sure that your issues are actually getting looked at for sure. And there's edge cases all the time that come up, and we want to see those. So ping us, let us know what's going on, give us as much detail as you possibly can, and we'll go from there. Once again, thank you guys.
One small plug that hopefully people are interested in doing. Our iOS and Android apps have a lot of reviews that are about the times that people are having issues, but not a lot of reviews about times that people are able to use the app to interact with their hotspots. Some of the improvements, hopefully people are finding the improvements around governance in the app and staking in the app and doing claims and all that stuff in the app to be useful. It would be helpful if for the folks that feel comfortable giving a positive review about it, it'd be helpful. I hate putting those nag screens in apps to ask for reviews. I find that to be kind of annoying personally. So I don't think I ever want to do that in our app. But for the folks, we're sort of hitting the issue that you have with Yelp reviews sometimes, where you only really put a review in when it's negative. So would really appreciate anyone if they do find things to be positive, if they're finding the improvements to be helpful to them, to sort of provide some reviews in there. And so I'll sort of ask the community this occasionally, but not in the app.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you there. I think the whole team's doing a lot of great work on it. And like you said, sometimes you only hear the negative stuff when everything else is working great. So great comment. Okay, we're going to move on to the next is going to be events and comms report. So first up, we've got British Guy.
British Guy. Thanks, Darren Hashcode, for that update. How you doing, Keenan? So just a quick an update on event land. Obviously, event season's well underway now, and if you've been watching the socials, you've seen the team popping up from Hong Kong to Germany. Embedded World last week in Germany was a successful event. Amy and Joey are still on the road and are now over at Hannover Messe. So we'll give you a proper update with both these events next month once we get the full debrief from the team there. So Hannover Messe is still going on for a couple more days and finishes on the 26th. They're over with Heliotics and Uplink in Hall 14, stand H06. So keep an eye out on the socials for things that are going on over there as well. And then after they come back from there, the team will be going over to New York for Smart Cities with Seed, and that will be the 22nd to 23rd of May, booth 505. And there's a couple of other events that we're working on, and I'll be able to give a full update on those next month as well, once a little bit more planning's fleshed out there, and be able to update the community. Obviously, if you're going to these events or you want to work together at events, feel free to message the foundation. Always keen to hear where the community is going. You can email us at hello@helium.foundation, and I'll drop the I'll drop in the chat the booth locations and those sites of those two events that the team are at the moment. And that is a quick update on the event land.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I see you posted those links in the chat. Appreciate it. Okay. We've actually got a maker update from Scott, please, if you're up here. Oh, there you are.
Yep. How's my audio?
Can hear you perfect.
Wonderful. All right, great. So it should be relatively quick. Just want to give a quick update on what's going on with respect to Maker ecosystem. So the first bit, so let's talk about kind of IoT makers first. So been an ongoing project really around resetting standards for IoT makers. Really the idea of making it very clear there's basic levels of service expectations. I caveat that the Helium Foundation's role here is not to be a consumer protection group, but historically there have been limited tools to hold makers accountable when there's been a meaningful volume of issues from within the community. So some of these, are familiar to folks in the call here as far as maintaining sufficient onboarding credits, firmware updates, adequate customer support. Historically, the only tool here has really been to revoke maker keys, but that does put consumers at risk in their ability to onboard hotspots. So what we have done is put together a contract. Makers are going to specifically have obligations that they're contractually bound to fulfill with the foundation. Those have since gone out several weeks ago for makers to review. There was a comment period, and now those are due and signed by the end of this month. So what does that mean if that's not signed? That means that if makers are not fulfilling some of what we would call kind of table stakes obligations around those matters, then the maker is going to be pulled from official websites and docs as an approved maker, so no longer listed on helium.com as an example. And they will also lose API access to the onboarding server. We're not going to be pulling any maker keys immediately, again, only around with the intent of protecting folks who still want to be able to self-onboard hotspots. But effectively, the idea they are no longer, air quote, approved makers within the ecosystem. We really want to make sure whatever we can be doing to maintain a healthy ecosystem of makers for supply side of the IoT network. That is really the goal here. So just thinking about long-term alignment and making sure that we've got the right folks in our ecosystem to continue serving the demand side. So over the course of the next few weeks, and once we hear back from everybody at Foundation, we will report on changes to the list of approved makers once the website is ready to be refreshed, and folks will be able to see who is active going forward. So that's on the IoT side. As far as the mobile network is concerned, so a bit of a shift there. First of all, great to see that HIP 117 has passed and minted, now approved to expand mobile hotspot supply and distribution. They have been a long-term player within the ecosystem, as most folks know. So great to see them providing support to expand on the mobile network as well. I have had some questions about a new maker process here. Some of this, again, thanks to Heated Lime for everything that's been put together around HIP 115. It does have clarification around stake tokens, minimum balances, especially for some of the providers who were approved during an interim period. One thing I want to call it is the differences versus the IoT network. So hotspot makers will need to align with a service provider in the case of the mobile network. Given that the only service provider today is Helium Mobile, run by Nova Labs, folks should expect there is going to be a release of some public requirements in the relative near future around hardware and firmware specifications, just so interested organizations will have some direction on what is going to be necessary within that process. So before they go through everything around our typical process of KYB, security checks, and staking mobile, understanding what is going to be expected as they are working in tandem with Helium Mobile until we have another service provider entering into the ecosystem. So that's the short of it right now. I would expect it's going to be very different than how we scaled up the supply side for IoT, given the fact of those orgs we're going to be working directly with a service provider, and there will be additional specs and requirements that need to be fulfilled, but want to give folks at least a sense of how those changes are coming to be. So I think that's it for now. More updates to come in announcement channels as we wrap up on the new contractual obligations for IoT makers, but folks can expect to see some changes in this coming month. That is all.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate the update. Okay, next up, we've got a governance update from Waveform.
Can you hear me again?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, so I said last month I'm going to be working on an updated HIP template and a stakeholder list. No, I won't get that done this month, probably beginning of next month. And then I'll be posting that in the governance channel or the HIP channel just for comments on those. I said that those are going to be a requirement for the next kind of HIP governance call, which will be a HIP creation workshop. So yes, so that's going to be probably the middle of next month when I start to do that. Also working on some other documents on HIP history, as I've discussed in the past. So we will they will link to HIPs and events in docs, and all the IoT HIPs and events in docs, and mobile HIPs and events in docs, so that when people are trying to write a HIP, they've got more of a background of what's gone on before without searching numerous HIPs or documents or Discord to provide the information they may need. Also been working on creating a data set of all the current staking history, which will probably get released to the community probably next week now, maybe this week, I'm not sure. So people who've been working on or wanting to work on staking HIPs for utility for IoT and mobile tokens will have an idea of what's been going on before, what the current staking situation is for planning what they could do in the future utility, and where people have been staking and patterns of staking. So that's going to be provided, as I said, hopefully next week, maybe even this week, not too sure. And yeah, that'll be provided. And I've been commenting on the information I've been finding on some of the other questions that have been asked about who's staking where and when and for how long. So that should be available for people to actually review themselves at any point in the future. And that's it from me.
Fantastic, thank you. And you said you'd have those in either the governance channel or HIP general channel, correct?
Probably in the governance channel, yeah, governance general.
Perfect. Okay, I'm just going to link to that in the chat in case you're wondering where that is. Perfect. Thank you, Waveform. Okay, so next up, we've got some updates coming from the working groups. So it looks like the IoT working group is up first, and we've got BFG Neil. Come on up. And if you can't, just put your hand up and I can bring you up. Perfect. There we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you. Go ahead.
Sorry, my dog's decided to be a pain. Right, so cool. Hi, sorry about that. The dog was a bit in a pain. So yeah, we've had new elections, so a new group has been formed. 10 of 13 applications are approved. Of note, I'd say that Joey's taken the chair role for the group now. And the only other one of note I would say is that Nova has a seat in Professor now. So Nova has a vote in the working group. We've had 3 meetings so far. In the first meeting, we discussed issues around running gateways and the current state of data-only hotspots. So right now, you can't onboard a data-only hotspot. The CLI wallet doesn't work. So for those looking to supplement their sensors with coverage, it's a bit of a sorry state for them to try and use the network at the moment. So that was the first meeting. We also talked about some of the makers apps and the issues with, some of the new HIPs that want to go through. They want to change fees, for instance. And suddenly, if we have makers that don't support apps anymore, if they're not doing that, then it's very difficult for us to get things changed in the system to make it easier or lower fees or something like that. So there needs to be a lot of work around that. And also from a point of view from managing these hotspots, I see it a lot. I see it a lot on Reddit, for example, people putting Bluetooth diagnostics reports on that have block status and things like that. Or another big one is they try and pair their Bluetooth and they get a object error. So it's just not intuitive for users to kind of manage this kind of stuff. And we need to kind of sort out a solution. One of those things is like maybe adding the QR code system back into the wallet, and then we have both types of support. A long-term thing would say, well, let's get rid of Bluetooth, because one of the issues that was brought up was if I buy a gateway and I send it to a customer, I can't onboard it unless I'm there with Bluetooth. So it's a big issue being able to remotely set up gateways for when you want to use them with data. And the final point was about that was community firmware. At the time, I know Bobcat have made some changes recently, but if Bobcat decide to not do anything anymore, how do we support those hotspots? I think having a community firmware would go a long way to solving all of this. And I just want to outline that, or we're not saying this is a foundation problem, not saying it's a Nova problem, or we're saying maybe we can come together as a community and fix these problems. Nothing really hippable, just that we need to put some focus on it. The second meeting, we also talked about Foundation Console. Although it's legacy, there are some issues around support. It's not anyone's product really, so it doesn't get that attention that it needs to support people. So we need to put in a long-term solution there of how that's going to happen. And this needs to be very long-term. Like, people may have sensors on there that they only visit once or twice a year. So anything that needs to be done on a very large timescale, but it seems to be a bit of a forgotten product at the moment, so it needs to be dropped. So people that do have focus and time to instantly fix these issues are the people that are running it. And the last bit of our conversation has mostly been around mapping the IoT network. A lot of us would like to see people rewarded for doing the mapping effort, but trusting the data and using the data are very big topics, and there's a lot of gaming angles with this as well. So there's a lot of ideas about how we split this into two parts. One is having a coverage map. So the idea here is that I have conversations nearly every week with customers saying, have I got coverage? And I can link them to Explorer, but Explorer shows them a Res 8 hex, and we all know hotspots can do miles of coverage. So there's no easy way for them to find if they have coverage. And the second part is using that mapping data for verification. Now, there's a couple of ideas around this, like, for instance, Demo maps a network. We could pay Demo for that data. We could pay Hive Mapper for that data and have a good data set that, the end users don't get anything for, but the foundations do. I mean, personally, and a lot of us would like to see that the end users are the ones getting rewarded for this. But if you put in a system in place that rewards people for mapping hexes and the number of hexes they mapped, it's going to be games. So there are some ideas about how we can reward users with this. NOSMaster, for example, has an example of maybe that we airdrop people. The other idea is that maybe we have a DAO finally. The mobile network needs mapping, the IoT network needs mapping. We could do things like Wi-Fi scanning as a DAO and offer that data. And particularly the IoT network could pay certain users for their data. This all exists in a certain DAO, and then when the DAO data is used, at that point, the people get rewarded for it. So there's a lot of different ideas around it, but that's a lot of the focus at the moment. That's everything. There is one final one that isn't to do with the IT working group, but I just wanted to bring it up in the community call. Is around staking for sub-DAO tokens. Now, Max has a HIP in, and I kind of tried to copy that HIP and bring the idea of giving the sub-DAO networks staking for their tokens. There are some big holes in it that mean that I can't just copy and paste it and put that HIP through for the IT network. And I know the mobile group are talking about it separately as well, but it feels like we should all hash out sub-DAO staking and then run the boat on mobile and IT separately. So rather than the working groups focusing on it. I wonder if, as a community, we can come together and have a talk about it and how we think it will work and how it's best to work for every network. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a very comprehensive update. Appreciate it. And for those listening as well, the IoT working group, I'm going to post it in the chat here. You can go to the IoT working group channel, posted there in the chat. It's what we call a fishbowl channel, so you can watch discussions happening from the working group members. Also, the calls every week for the IoT working group happen. The time might be changing, by the way, but the IoT working group calls happen on Monday. The calls are recorded, and they are posted in that channel of IoT-working-group. If you go to the pin at the top of your page, if you're on your phone or on your desktop, you'll see all the previous calls from every week recorded and posted there so you can listen in. So if you miss an update from the working group on Monday, you can listen to it on Tuesday. All right. Thank you very much, Neil. Next up, we've got the mobile working group, and we're going to be hearing from Zero Tweets. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you great.
Okay, so we have a whole bunch of HIPs. Some are about to get voted, some are being discussed, some are being implemented. One of the pieces of feedback that we have received is that there's just way too many HIPs, and many of them quite dramatically change how the reward structure works, thereby precluding people from being able to plan what to deploy and where. Do I deploy CBRS? Do I deploy Wi-Fi? Do I deploy in a city? Do I deploy in a rural location, etc.? So we have taken that feedback to heart, and I think we'll be slowing down the pace of HIP production, so to speak. I think the group has been too productive, so to speak. This is not to say that there'll be no changes going forward. We still need to continue evolving the network, but we will definitely try to make those changes a little bit slower and a little bit less dramatic. Now, I wanted to give updates on the implementation of some of the critical HIPs that have passed and are being worked on that will quite dramatically affect rewards for everybody in the mobile sub-DAO. First, probably biggest and most important one is HIP 113 that will increase the rewards for Wi-Fi roughly 3x and decrease CBRS rewards. Highly controversial HIP that passed, and that will roll out on-chain on May 10th, which is, if I'm not mistaken, almost exactly 30 days after the HIP has been voted. Next one that has been getting rolled out in waves is HIP 103 around Oracle hex boosting. The last Oracle, which is a land type Oracle, is going to be rolled out tomorrow. So as of tomorrow, at least from the standpoint of reward calculations that are done by the reward oracles, all three oracles will have been implemented. And the next important thing that we'll be tackling is updating the planner/explorer, because right now these calculations for the rewards are not properly reflected in the explorer projections. You can see the different layers and toggle between the different layers, but explorer is not aware of the reward side of it. So that's 103. And the last one that's worth mentioning briefly is 109, which allows service providers to specify more precisely when boosting an area what specific layer the boosting is for. Is it for indoor or outdoor? And is it for CBRS or Wi-Fi? And the expectation for implementation on that HIP is around May 15th, so middle of May. So that's my update.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Boris. Appreciate it. And once again, the mobile working group, just like the IoT working group, has their own channel. I will post a link to that right now. So it is mobile-working-group. You can follow along with their conversations happening in there. Again, the mobile working group meetings happen on Thursdays. You can find their events in the Discord events button at the very top of your page there. And the calls are recorded every week on Thursdays. You can see it in the pins in that mobile working group channel. So if you miss one, go to their channel, click the pins. You can listen to the previous call. All right. So just moving along. HIPs currently voting. We actually have none, so we're going to skip that. We just had a few HIPs close up voting. So we're going to go to HIPs expected next for voting. We've got IoT HIP 116, OUI additional address space reshuffle, and Waveform is going to talk about that one first. So take it away, Waveform.
Just a quick clarification from Boris. A question that's been asked: when will the planner be updated for HIP 113?
I don't have the exact estimates, frankly. I think it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen in May. My guess is that probably the first couple of weeks of May. And I also think that it's not going to be like an immediate update. So there's going to be like a few waves that will roll this out in. So we'll bring the planner's ability to calculate rewards closer and closer to the reality of what oracles are actually distributing, like over a few iterations in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, just a few comments on the HIPs that are probably next to vote. HIP 116 about the OU address space. Yes, that will probably go to vote very shortly. Joey will be confirming that the HIP's correct, that he can implement what's in there probably as soon as he's finished being on the road. The next one again will probably be HIP 115. I'm working with Heated Lime, just reading that. We're probably going to build into that one standardizing the mobile maker HIP governance process. So rather than having each maker creating their own HIP, they can fill in a form with some content, and then that will be the HIP to approve the makers. So they kind of all operate on a standardized process. So they're the next two that I'm pretty sure are coming up for voting soon. We've also got, as others arrive and people say, can this go up to vote? If everything's ready within that content, that'll go up for vote. There have been requests, just like as Boris has mentioned, about the number of HIPs that we will be trying to help HIPs merge together if at all possible, if that's what the authors are willing. And also, we have requests as well to only have HIP voting once a month. I don't think that's going to be possible, but we'll try and batch wherever possible because it makes it easier for the processors as well. So maybe we only have a couple of voting periods per month. That's something we could do in the future. Depends on community feedback. If you've got feedback on that, please let us know. And I'd like to hand over to Heated Lime for his comments on where he is with HIP 115.
Heated Limer, if you're in the audience, I see you. I'll bring you up. There you go. Take it away.
Hey, thanks. So yeah, 115 will redefine the mobile maker process and how they're onboarded to interact and sell devices for the sub-DAO. There's an open PR for it waiting to be merged. The main change that is in this PR is previously mobile makers were required to hold the minimum balance to allow a specific amount of onboards, which would typically be about 100. And so they would then be required to hold the corresponding tokens in mobile, HNT, DC, etc. But with the fluctuation of mobile, the amount of mobile would actually change for the onboard. So there'd be some market fluctuations. And so to keep it kind of simple, instead of having makers hold a mobile balance, we're actually just going to have them hold a USDC balance. And then basically once the onboard is triggered, the USDC balance would then be swapped for mobile and or HNT DC, and then correspondingly burned, just to kind of streamline things and prevent makers from having to ensure that they have enough mobile in their account to based on the price of mobile to support the onboards. So I think will be a good change overall, and it also just holds makers accountable for ensuring that they do have a minimum balance in their escrow account.
Awesome. Thank you, Heated Lime. You can just stay up on the stage. I think I'm going to be calling you up again shortly. Just moving on to the next section here, we've got new HIPs and updates. So we're going to talk about mobile HIP 118 verification mapping from mobile update from Zero Tweets. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the 118 is a long-awaited verification mapping concept. The general idea behind verification mapping is that hotspot rewards get affected depending or not on whether a phone that's designated as a verification phone has been able to connect to the hotspot. The general premise behind this new iteration of verification mapping is that we'll be using the data that we get from the T-Mobile towers to verify that a particular phone is actually not lying about their location. So one of the big problems of verification mapping is that you need to trust the verification mapper. And one of the ways to trust is to make sure that the location that the phone is broadcasting when doing, like, for example, discovery mapping for its GPS is not being spoofed. And the way to do it is to kind of cross-correlate this location to what we know about this phone's location as shared by the T-Mobile towers to us. And if the two match, then with a very kind of reasonable degree of certainty, we can assume that this phone is actually not compromised and sharing the location accurately. And then based on that, we assume that we have certain number of trusted verification mappers. And then the verification mapper will be able to connect to the radio and verify that indeed the radio is where it's said it asserted it is. So that's kind of the TLDR on the HIP. There is an active conversation happening in the community across a number of vectors. Like, for instance, one of the important questions that need to be answered is like, how do we actually affect the rewards for the hotspots if, for instance, a hotspot has never been verified? And if it's not been verified because there's not enough density of subscribers, or maybe somebody just put it in the closet or something like this, do we slash the rewards to 0? Do we slash them a little bit? Do we just make this hotspot not eligible for boosted rewards to some extent? So that conversation's ongoing. Another vector of discussion is how do we roll it out? Do we roll it out all at once, or do we roll it out in stages, where potentially in the beginning we just collect the data and then we start some reward adjustments and then we start more reward adjustments, etc. So I would encourage everybody to jump in the channel and provide your feedback, and of course, also very much encourage everybody to please read the HIP before you start commenting, because all too often people like to comment without reading or understanding the HIP. So that's it. 118.
Perfect. Thank you, Boris. I did put a link to HIP 118 verification mapping in the chat, so feel free to read through there. The HIP is linked at the top. Next up, we've got mobile HIP 111. I believe I'm looking for Elon Tusk. He was here earlier. I know he's a busy guy. He might be at work. So just going to wait here for 1 second to see if he's available to talk on it. Not seeing him in the crowd here. Okay, so you know what? We'll come back to that one if he comes available. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Share the TLDR on 111 if it's useful.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So the general idea behind 111 is to make sure that all hotspots pass some data, maybe 1 megabyte or maybe just a little bit of data. And if you don't pass any data, then your rewards get flashed. The way it's structured is that actually if you do pass data, you get a 10x reward boost. It doesn't really matter if you get like a 10x reward boost and half a population of hotspots gets it and the other one doesn't. It basically, you can look at it as flashing or boosting. It's roughly the same outcome, but the point is that the reason this HIP was written is to ensure that the hotspots are placed in locations where there is actually a ability to pass data, and either that data is passed by the subscribers or at the very least, if there are no subscribers in the area because you put it somewhere where it's rural or you believe there'll be subscribers later, that forces the deployer to actually go and pass the data for the hotspot. The big upside to this HIP is that it actually ensures that the hotspot's operational on a regular basis, that it's capable of passing data, that the RF front end is on, that nothing funny is going on. So that's, I guess, the TLDR on that HIP.
Perfect. Thank you. There was just a clarification message from Hashcode in the chat, so I'll just read that out. The words, you were using the word slashed, but it doesn't mean the same thing in crypto. I'd say reduced, since it is a pool that's shared with others. The tokens themselves don't get slashed, i.e. they don't get removed from supply. So just a quick terminology update there.
Yep, thanks. Agreed.
Cool. Thanks, Hashcode. Okay, next up we've got Mobile HIP 114, Incentive Escrow Fund for Subscriber Referrals. Again, zero tweets. Take it away.
So Mobile HIP 114 is introduces a mechanism for any service provider, in this case Helium Mobile specifically, to take the rewards that it earns as a service provider for sending the data to the network, and delegate these rewards that it could otherwise have pocketed into an escrow fund that can then be used to create various incentive programs, such as, for example, if you're a hotspot owner, you can refer subscribers to the network and earn additional mobile. The reasoning behind this HIP is that when initially the service provider rewards were envisioned, the idea behind those was that they would be used to run different creative programs by the service providers to incentivize, getting subscribers on the network. But for a variety of regulatory reasons, service providers, including Helium Mobile, can't directly distribute tokens to really anybody. And the extent of, regulatory risk associated with such activity varies greatly depending on geography you operate. So it's different set of rules in Mexico, different set of rules in US, etc. So the idea here is to effectively be able to achieve that original intended goal, to use the service provider rewards to grow the subscribers on the network, but have a way to do it where the rewards aren't like directly handed out to the subscribers from the service provider. So that's the summary on 114.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I'm going to have you speak again in just a second because we're moving on to HIPs implemented. So we're going to talk about mobile HIP 103, Phase 3 mobile Oracle hex boosting.
Yeah, so I gave an update on this already during the initial mobile workgroup update. The last Oracle, which is a land type Oracle for 103, will land on chain tomorrow. And after that, the focus will be on updating Planner and Explorer to make sure that it's able to calculate the rewards aligned with like the 103 oracles. So the short answer is that like the last step of 103 implementation will be completed tomorrow.
Perfect. That's awesome. All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, so next section is HIPs that have failed. So we've got mobile HIP 107, deterring gaming through verification fees. Heated Lime, if you want to just talk on that one.
Yeah, not much to say, but other than I think the main reason it failed was probably because it gave Nova too much power, and people are sometimes against giving that much power to a central authority. There is a new PR for a new similar HIP that closes gaming loopholes, but doesn't give Nova the authority to ban hotspots. So waiting for that to become an actual HIP. But I think that'll be definitely important to pass to close specific gaming loopholes, specifically within Wi-Fi. So looking forward to that getting numbered.
Got it. Okay. And if you have that PR, you can pop it into chat if you like. That's up to you. Next up, we're going to talk about IoT HIP 112, scaling IoT hotspot assert fees. Again, Heated Lime, if you can talk on that one briefly.
Yep. So that one I was kind of bummed to see fail. Basically, it allowed IoT hotspots to have one free location assert per year. And it also excluded the initial assertion. And I think the reason that failed was because a lot of people still wanted the first assert to be paid by the maker, and they also wanted the assertion to be paid in IoT versus DC. So I think the HIP was in the right direction, but it just didn't include everything. People wanted to go further. So hopefully maybe somebody can pick up the pieces on that and make a new HIP with some of the adjustments to get something like that to pass. But I do think it's important that there is some sort of free assertion based on a specific time period to ensure people are asserting these in the correct location.
Great, thank you for the updates. Okay, next up we've got HIP 1110, HNT tokens proxy voting. And Hashcode, if you can touch on that one, please.
Yeah, so this sort of fits on both sides of the failed and successes, and so I'll cover both actually as a transition, since I know we're going to talk about HIPs that passed. So HIP 1110 was a proposal by us at the foundation, and we're prepared to make the engineering sort of changes to implement this to allow wallets to be able to delegate their vote authority or proxy their vote authority to another wallet. There's a variety of reasons why you might want to do this. The sort of what we expect is the most common practical example of this is someone who isn't as involved in the community, not on Discord every single day, for example, but wants to be able to support changes that are happening in the community and trust another party to sort of make those votes on their behalf. It still allows them to modify that vote and sort of on a per vote basis or to revoke that delegation. And it sort of sets a timeline on how long that delegation lasts. It's for basically a year. And so they would have to reaffirm that on a yearly basis. So this vote, we ran this separately on all three sort of governance instances. So think HNT, IoT, and mobile. And the reason why we did it this way is we thought that it was important that each one of these parties or each one of these groups are able to vote on this individually. This failed in HNT because sufficient quorum wasn't reached. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the community believes that it was worth going forward or not. It was just that there are not enough people participating, and this is one of the problems that we're hoping. Right, Neil. This is one of the problems that we're hoping to solve here, and so this is a little unorthodox, but I think the right move here is for us to go through another vote process. I'm going to try to kick this off with the multi-sig today and to kick off the vote again. And the foundation is going to be a lot louder about this HIP and be a lot more vocal in all the channels that we are. So expect at least 1 or 2 push notifications in your apps. Expect, there'll be a couple of parties in the ecosystem that we'll be reaching out to personally. For example, like I'll be reaching out to some of the folks who haven't been voting because this particular feature wasn't available to them, and I will tell them to vote because of that, and then they can proxy after that. So as Neil said, we needed proxy voting to get to get this hit passed in HNT. But good news is that it did pass in IoT and in mobile. This is something that we are prepared to implement probably in the next couple of weeks. It does need to go through some, the initial version of this of our governance system has gone through audit. The proxy voting side of it hasn't completely, and there's some features that we want to make sure that are in there. Also, we need to build all the UI around this, right? So it's cool that this passed, but you need a very simple way to be able to see your delegation, see where your proxies are voting during a HIP, be able to individually revoke that delegation, or vote on to override. So all of this is the UX here is really, really important, and so I really do want to make sure that we get that right. And then we'll formally launch this. We'll formally launch a call for delegates for proxies, and yeah, so we'll go through this process. And also, it'll probably be a month or two before all of this is really landed, just for the community's knowledge. But know that this is a priority now, especially since we've gotten a mandate, at least on the IoT and mobile side. And hopefully, while we're doing that, we'll sort of get that mandate on the HNT side. And Solana congestion. Sorry, Siegfried. I hear you.
Awesome. Thanks for the update, Hashcode. Yeah, that congestion. All right, we're going to move along to Mobile HIP 113, reward CBRS as experimental. Rarman, I see you there. I'm going to bring you on up. All right. If you could just give us a quick little rundown, what's going on with 113, that'd be awesome.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Amazing. So yeah, 113 is going live in math like 17-ish days. It's going live on May 10th, as I believe somebody already mentioned. There is a big change with 113 to rewards in mobile, which is basically that the CBRS coverage points are going to be reduced by 75%, which will, as of my calculations on a date slightly before HIP 113 went to vote, it was about a 45 to 50% token reward, mobile token reward reduction for CBRS radios as of the day the HIP goes live. But things have changed since then. There has been the mobile footfall oracle, and there will be the land type oracle also going into place. So it is a moving target exactly how much the rewards will be reduced for CBRS. So I recommend waiting until the day just to see what happens. There was a spreadsheet that was floating around that allowed you to look up your hotspot or radio, but that also contains some errors. So I recommend that anyone who was looking at that spreadsheet, just discard it, discount it. It was not correct. It was never correct. So you can do calculations following the math in the HIP if you would like. All the data sources are given, so you can do that yourself. But I would recommend just waiting until the day. And of course, the flip side of CBRS rewards being reduced is that the Wi-Fi rewards will be increased by, it's basically a zero-sum game. So whatever rewards are taken away from CBRS will be given to Wi-Fi. And that should be about a 2x, maybe slightly more than 2x boost for Wi-Fi hotspot mobile rewards. So really excited to have this happen. I think it's going to be a boon to the Wi-Fi deployment. And as we all know, Wi-Fi is what's producing all the data burn on the network right now. And they're really easy to deploy. They're affordable, easy to get set up with, just great in all ways. And well, I'll leave it at that. So yeah, thanks everyone for supporting 113 and looking forward to having it go live.
Thank you, Rorman, and thank you for mentioning that Excel sheet. I know that was causing some confusion in the community, so appreciate it. Okay. Next up, we've got Mobile HIP 109, hex boosting by deployment. Heated Lime. Do you want to speak on that, please?
Yep. So HEC 109 is basically an amendment to HIP 84, which allows service providers to burn mobile to boost location or boost rewards for specific location. And so 109 goes further and allows the service provider upon burning to specify whether the boost is going to be applied to CBRS or Wi-Fi. I might let the hash code go a little further into this, I think, but the HIP went even further than that and specified that it'll give the service provider the option to burn sorry, I was just reading Hashcode's message, to specify if it's going to be indoor or outdoor Wi-Fi. And so I don't think that's able to be implemented right away. And so I think when it is going to be implemented, at first it'll just be for CBRS versus Wi-Fi. Hashcode, is there anything to add on that?
Yeah, I'll post a link to our implementation in channel right now for folks who hadn't read it in the 109 channel. There's some complexity in the implementation of building things the way that was defined in the HIP. And this is not necessarily like a fault of the authors or the community for approving this. This is just a matter of like an implementation detail that makes things hard to build on chain. And so we think the right thing to do here is to mostly implement this HIP at this point, and launch it, and either have the community amend the proposal through another HIP, or if there's somebody out there who can sort of look at our implementation and come up with an alternative to sort of improve that. And the specific part that's not being implemented is this idea of a discount. So if you boost a hex with Wi-Fi outdoor, and then later on want to also boost it for Wi-Fi indoor as well, you don't have to pay as much. And it probably was in there for a good reason, but from an implementation perspective, it actually creates a significant amount of complexity on chain. And I don't think it's appropriate to sort of add that on right now, at least the way that we're looking at it. So that's sort of the summary of what's in that link that I sent. If folks don't want to read it, but yeah, I think it would be good to sort of get some clarity from the community on which way folks are thinking, given this proposal. The code itself that is sort of this mostly implemented version of 109 is in audit right now with our outside auditors. And then after that, we also need to go through the process of actually building this stuff on the Oracle side. So it'll be a few, or at least probably several weeks before we even get there. The audit process itself takes anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So like that's like a base minimum here. Once we have a better sense of timeline, especially on that Oracle work, we'll share that with the community. But for now, like know that we are working towards it, and then we have sort of the initial implementation going.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. And as Hashcode mentioned, links are in the chat if you want to go read along there. So we are going to move on to the final HIPS passed. But just before we do, just want to mention that we're coming to near the end of the call. So if you had any questions for anyone, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can follow up with those after our next section. But first, we've got Mobile HIP 117 add minted as a hotspot vendor to the Helium mobile subnetwork. And Waveform, I see you're up here already. Is there anyone to talk on this one?
No, Jose can't make it, and Ken's got difficulty with Discord, but he would like to thank the community for the opportunity and for voting for Minted.
Fantastic. Fair enough. All right.
And the one thing that I would add on that, from the foundation's perspective, we'll start working with Minted on the sort of requirements that they have to follow in order to become an official hotspot vendor. And once they go through that process, they'll announce when this is actually possible. And so we'll sort of leave it to them to be able to announce when they're able to, offer hotspots to the community. But the foundation, like, we're excited to have them being the second vendor here, and looking forward to seeing more deployments of this hardware. I got a chance to see this hardware myself in Hong Kong, and it's very familiar looking, but it also it'll be great to get this at scale, right? Having Rack or Minted here build this stuff is
awesome. Thank you for the update. Yeah, I think everyone's pretty excited to see what this hardware looks like. All right. So I do see one quick question. Oh, never mind. Hashcode answered it. Have Minted staked the required mobile yet? They have not. All right. We are coming to the end of our call. I don't see any questions in the chat, so we are going to call it there. Thank you, everyone, for joining. The next call is going to be, I believe, the 29th of May. I will double check that. I think it is the last Wednesday of May. I think that is the 29th. This call has been recorded. Again, it will be posted in the Discord. You can go back and listen to it later on. It will be posted on Foundation's YouTube as well. And if you have any questions, comments, anything, feel free to ping myself or Waveform on the Discord. Once again, we will not DM you, so keep it in public, please. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you in May. Thanks, everyone. All right, have a wonderful day.